All right, everybody, welcome to yet another session of Whiteboard. This is our Nakshatra Gurukul sessions that we have started on my YouTube page. And this is a series of thought-provoking interviews with researchers, scholars, and students of Nakshatras who would like to teach us new ways of understanding and mastering the divine secrets of these lunar mansions. Now, when I started my study with Nakshatras, I recollect my days. I was desperately seeking an authentic Vedic literature or manuscript that would have had a definitive research on myths, symbols, and rituals on lunar mansions. And then I came across this fantastic book, 27 Stars and 27 Gods, the Astrological Mythology of Ancient India. And after having read this introduction by this author, and in 5 minutes, I knew that this book was quite unique. Now, I have come across many authors who have written on nakshatras, but this was one author who had spoken about the most prevalent misconceptions related to nakshatras. And it is in this book that this author shares some deep revelations and rare expositions of nakshatras. And he brings this through explaining the Vedic way. He explains the Sanskrit terms, and he also emphasizes on the Vedic mythology. So it is great divine storytelling this book was all about. So our guest today is the author of this fantastic book, who has deep intuitive grasp of astrological symbolisms of ancient India, as well as knowledge of the sacred stories of Indian lore. So please help me welcome Vic DiCara. Welcome, Vic. Namaste.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Welcome. Fantastic to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So Vic, tell us, about your book on 27 Stars, 27 Gods. How did this all come about? I mean, is that something that you had planned for, or and I can see that it was a very well-researched book because you have referred all the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Brahmanas, which are available. So you have really gone and studied them in deep. I have not come across any other author who has done this. So how did this all happen?
Maybe it's because astrology isn't my first interest in Vedic culture. Vedic culture is my first interest.
Right.
And astrology is then an anga of that. So maybe that's why I actually have access to Shastra. Whereas most people that get into Vedic astrology, that's what they're into about Vedic culture, and that's the only access that they have is maybe Bipin Bihari and B.V. Raman and some other things. So that may be, because I started studying Gita and Bhagavatam in 1989.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I went to India. I would stay in Vrindavan for a few months at a time and study at an institute there. So I got like a Bhakti Shastri degree, they call it.
Okay.
And so I got some exposure to Sanskrit, and I began to become familiar with Sanskrit and be able to look at the texts themselves instead of just translations, which is a big plus.
I absolutely think that's a great plus point. I know many of us being Indians, we don't even go and read our Shastras. We don't even read the Vedantic principles which are there. So, and to understand Sanskrit and then read them and interpret them, I think that is a great thing that, so maybe that helped you in your journey towards nakshatras.
So I had a background in the books, and then when I became interested in astrology, I already had a whole background.
Right.
So it was easier to learn astrology more quickly and to have a view on it, which it wasn't coming from a modern samskar, but was coming from the Vedic, more Vedic samskar. So I wasn't looking at things only through the lens of the YouTube or the internet, or in those days there wasn't even, but there's the books that are in English and things, and that's how people look at it. I think maybe I was looking at it more like, does this make sense with Vedanta? Does this make sense with what I already know? You know, in the Puranas, there's a lot of cosmology, and there's discussion of zodiacs and things. So, you know, because it's an important part of Vedic culture is to be able to tell time.
Absolutely.
So that you know when you're supposed to do the yajna. Otherwise, you don't. When is this holiday? When is that holiday? When is this supposed to be done? When is that supposed to be done? If you can't tell the time, you can't do the yajna. So that's why it's one of the Vedanga. It's the sixth Vedanga is Jyotish.
Yeah.
So and how do you tell time? You can't tell time unless you can see where the planets are.
Yeah, that's right.
It's by the sun and the moon and the rest of the planets too, a little bit. So I guess maybe that's it.
So this is about the muhurtas you're talking about. You know, what is the right muhurta to do the yajnas and the fire rituals? So that is where this the basis of this knowledge is. So
yeah.
So Vic, tell us, did you have a guru that you learned from Jyotish, or did you self-train yourself, or was there somebody who influenced you in your journey?
Yes, this is a great blasphemy because I don't have a guru.
Right.
And this is disturbing to the Indian heart, because we should have a guru for everything. But I just don't, I'm sorry. I have Mercury is in Leo with Ketu. So that tends to be self-taught. Mercury in Leo just tends to be self-taught. And I mean, that's one excuse. But the other excuse is that I have guru. But it's just not, I don't have a Jyotish guru or something. I have a guru. That's the important part. I have guru. I've learned Sanskrit. I learned Shastra. Jyotish is one anga of the Veda. Why somebody insists that you have to have a special guru only for Jyotish? I don't understand. I don't have a guru for a guitar either, but I'm a famous guitar player. I don't have a guru I can play mridanga. I can play harmonium. I don't have a guru.
Right.
So some things are talents and skills. You pick them up. You need a guru, and what you really need a guru for is to get you out of your own internal samskar, so that you can see reality from a point of view that isn't just the one that you already have. So you don't really, a guru is not like a trainer or like a circus trainer teaching an elephant how to dance on a ball, but a guru is the person who gets you out of your samskar.
Right.
Without getting out of that samskar, you're locked into your version of reality, and you can't get a higher one. And even the books, even the Shastra is not useful because it can only come in through your intellect. So if our intellect isn't more opened or massaged or changed from what we already think, then we can't even access Shastra. So the guru is very, although Indian culture regards guru so highly and very rightly so, they also have ironically brought it down to being more like as a trainer.
I think
you have this. Go ahead.
I think I agree with you, Vic. Even I come from the same school of thought because I do not have a Jyotish guru myself. I started Jyotish, but I started self-training most of the times. I would never go to somebody like a trainer or a mentor or a guide asking him, okay, why is this planet exalted here in this sign? So you kind of think over it, brood over it, and you start teaching. So this is something that I've come across. A lot of people today, the youngsters, always think that they need to have a guru to start their education. But most of the things is you can teach yourself because the guru is within you. Yeah, you can have a physical guru outside who can actually guide you, mentor you, and show you the path. But it is you have to walk that path. He can't walk it for you. So I think it's not important that everybody could, or everybody is fortunate to have a Jyotish guru. But I think if you can have the foundation of your learnings, pretty well grounded, and you can start from there. I think that's how you start the journey. But anyway, Vic, so tell us, I was referring to the misconceptions that.
Can I say something just before we go to that?
Yeah.
I wish that I had a Jyotish guru. It would have been so much easier. It's not like I decided that I don't want to have a Jyotish Guru because I don't need one because I'm great. And I'm just in touch with Paramatma, and what do I need with this other? It's not that. It's not like I didn't want a Jyotish Guru. And it's also that I don't. There's also, what is the Guru? Is the Guru only this one person who hits you on the head with a peacock and then puts a sign on your forehead, or is Guru the person who you learn from? And so then, how can we learn? Of course, you can't learn anything without a Guru, because Guru is by definition the person you learn from. So of course, there's many Gurus.
Yeah.
But the problem is, I wish that I had a Guru, and I just didn't. I was looking for them, and nobody was giving. The other thing is, I'm Capricorn ascendant, and I have the moon in the 6th house. Like I said, like I'm not easily impressed. So I just didn't find that anybody was worthy of being a guru, which is where, you know, I'm going to submit my samskara to be reprogrammed by this person because they really get it. They know it. So I just didn't find that. Everybody was giving some information, but some of the information seemed to be disorganized or incomplete or messed up. And the scholarship was not high from any source, you know? So I just didn't find it. I wish that I had a Jyotish Guru.
I'm sure, you know, everybody would love to have somebody who can really guide them. But, you know, that shouldn't, my only thing was that shouldn't stop you from learning something because you haven't found, you know, somebody in life. So everybody wishes that, you know, they should have somebody who could actually mentor them, guide them, and take them forward. But if you cannot find one, you know, you should just go ahead and see how much. But I have always seen, whenever in the presence of somebody who is got this higher knowledge, even his presence was enough for you to absorb a lot of that information. So the presence of a higher soul always helps you in expediting some of your karmas. If you call that a guru, whether they don't teach you anything, but just their presence is enough, I have seen that element acting up more in my life than actually having a physical Jyotish Guru who was actually sitting beside me and teaching me, you know, what is to be done. But the spiritual aspect of having somebody, and, you know, that was more important for me. I think, you know, for different people have different experiences. So I think that's fair enough. So Vic, tell us about those misconceptions, those what people have about nakshatras. And, you know, I've mentioned about that in my introduction, that this is something that I've seen in your book and in your introduction of the book. So can you just tell us more about these misconceptions that people have?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, we are just, what are we? We are just nothing but consciousness with a bunch of misconceptions. That's all we are. So where can we start with misconceptions? And then people are so shocked if you say that they have a misconception. How can this be shocking? What are you? You're a jiva with avidya. Avidya, that's all. So of course there's misconceptions, but everyone has so much ahamkar. Even the so-called guru, there's so much ahamkar that if you say, hey, there's a little avidya here, they'll cast you out and make you the Satan, cast out from heaven. So of course there's so many mistakes, and even the person pointing out the mistakes has mistakes, makes mistakes. But that's good. If there's no mistakes, then how is their growth? How is their knowledge? How do you learn anything? But it's only not good when the person just refuses to admit that I have mistakes. And so it's so hard. And this actually can be compounded by a guru culture. Because the guru culture is based on the idea that you just, the way that we have the modern guru culture, which is not really a Vedic Gurukula, but the modern idea of guru is you listen. Just listen, because I'm perfect and I got it. You just listen. So this is not really so well, but yeah, there are misconceptions, and even the gurus have misconceptions. I mean, where should we start? You bring up something.
Okay, Vic, tell us about these misconceptions about nakshatras being associated with planetary lords.
Sure, I like this one. So this is the concept that there are, basically the whole misconception of the sky is that nakshatras are part of rashis, and that they're mixed together, and that they're like together. That's the greatest underlying misconception. And so we try to think, well, rashis have elements, so nakshatras should have earth, water, fire, air, or rashis have planetary rulers, so the nakshatras need those too, because they're the same thing. They're part of the same system, but they're not the part of the same system. They're a different way of addressing space. So yeah, they're pointing at the same space, but they're different systems of addressing the same space. So, wanting the nakshatras to have planetary rulers, then people say, well, what is Ashwini? That should be Ketu, right? And then the next one should be Venus, and so forth. So they say, we need rulers for these things so that we can work with them just like we work with the rashis, because after all, they're just like the rashis. So let's give them these rulers. I mean, everybody knows that if the moon is in Ashwini, then that means Ketu is going to be the dasha. So Ketu is the ruler of Ashwini. And so great, we have a married time. Now we can assign, each planet can have 3 nakshatra. And good, now we can do all these crazy things, like we can talk about parivartana between nakshatras, and we can talk about like Raj Yoga being formed by the people will go, now they riff on it, and they'll just run with it. But they'll tell you that you need a guru because you have to be conservative, but they'll just go off on their own way, doing anything that they want. So I would rather see somebody actually stick with Shastra than to claim that they're so traditional and orthodox, but they actually do things which are totally speculations or inventions, baseless inventions. Anyway, it sounds like it's a good idea. Let's say it sounds interesting. Okay, makes sense. Ketu can be the lord of Ashwini, because if the moon is in Ashwini, then Ketu is the dasha for that person at that birth. But the problem came when I actually read Brihat Parashara Shastra. So I'm eager to read about dasha. Everybody is. So I'm looking at the chapters on dasha, and all of a sudden, to my great surprise, years ago, what is this? There's like 15 different nakshatra dasha to find there. And not only that, there's this whole other system of dasha, of rashi dasha, and all other kinds of strange things. Whereas I was thinking that this is dasha. It's like the dasha. Vimshotari dasha. We don't even need the name Vimshotari. We just say dasha. So I was very surprised with all these different dashas. That's fascinating, but also a little terrifying, because I thought that it's hard enough to interpret Vimshotari dasha. Now I have 15 different ones. So, okay, let me look at this more. I look at it more carefully. How are they defined? Oh, this is interesting. They're all different lengths. Vimshotari is 120, and then there's Ashtotari, 108, and then there's all these other ones. That's cool. Makes sense. And the mathematical ratios between the things. Oh, yeah, okay. Then you get to this part where he says, how do you determine the dasha, which is active at birth? Well, of course, it's by the moon's nakshatra, if it's a nakshatra dasha. But the part comes in when he's defining something for Ashtotari, and he says, if the moon is an Ashwini, then it has to start with Jupiter dasha. I'm not sure if that's the actual one, because this was years ago and I didn't memorize it. But the really important point is that, I thought that Ketu was somehow associated with Ashwini, but it's only associated with it in this one context, the context of dasha, and not just dasha, but the context of nakshatra dasha, and not just nakshatra dasha, but the context of Vimshotari dasha, which is one amongst many of possible dashas. So the idea that Ketu is associated with, that any planet is associated with any nakshatra just because it's in the Vimshotari dasha system, is a huge leap. So you don't see it. Where will you find I don't think, to my knowledge, I don't think you can find a medieval or, we have records up to like medieval, maybe semi-ancient astrologers. Do they talk about like nakshatra parivartanas and
That's right.
nakshatra lords. I never saw that. And if so, on what basis do you assign the ruler to the nakshatra? Because it's a Vimshottari dasha. Well, what if Vimshottari is not applicable to this chart? Or what if another dasha? In other words, people are reaching the basic problem. The basic problem with astrology is that people are reaching for ways to make it work. Because we have come through a very dark period of history where ancient sciences were destroyed and all kinds of ancient knowledge was completely lost and corrupted. We came through this dark period. And the only reason why we came through it is because this is an unusual yuga. It's not a usual Kali Yuga, but it's an unusual Kali Yuga. Otherwise, it just continues to get darker and darker and darker. The Dark Ages don't usually end with a Renaissance.
Yeah.
But after the Renaissance, people didn't revive the ancient sciences. They started to make new, using the ascending method. What would we call that? I always mistake if it's avaroha or varoha, going up.
I wouldn't know. Yeah. I wouldn't know the concept, yeah.
Their punt is going up from our panta now. Our path now is going up from, we start with our eyes and then we go up to knowledge.
Right.
The ancient sciences are you have some knowledge coming from some divine source and it comes through your intellect into your eyes.
Right. Okay.
So after the Renaissance, the system became going up from the eye to the knowledge. Previous, the ancient sciences, it was coming down from the knowledge to the eye. So they rebuilt the sciences, but they rebuilt new sciences. So the ancient sciences were never rebuilt. So now, but as the age progresses and people become interested again in things like astrology or meditation or even philosophy, then we have these broken versions now that haven't really been repaired. And then there's no grounding. So we're just reaching for new things to try to repair the stuff that's not working. That's why I steer away from new things. And it's very disappointing to people because people love new things. That's the nature of the mind, is that, well, it loves new things. People want to hear about a new technique and they want to hear about a new discovery. But I steer away from new discoveries because I want to figure out first what the thing was originally. What was this astrological system originally? It's simple, basic, and it works. I want that. So they're reaching for straws. How can we make this chart work? This person is a millionaire and there's nothing that I can see in this chart that shows them a millionaire. I got to find something. Well, if I do this and this and this and this and this, I can explain how they're a millionaire. Yep. But I think it's probably the reason why we couldn't explain that they're millionaires, because there was something that we didn't do right in the more basic things. Maybe how we calculated something, maybe our understanding of what Sagittarius really is. Maybe we don't have the symbolism really proper. Maybe we're assigning something to Venus when it actually should be assigned to Mercury. Some symbolism. Basic things, I think, are what need to be fixed, not these new amazing inventions. Nakshatra lords, dynamic house systems. I don't know, there's so many things. The Western astrology too has just gone off and off and off and off into more and more complicated, wild things, progressions and asteroids and all these things. Not my type. I'm not into that at all. It's not my type. I'm simple type.
I'm glad, Vic, I'm very, very glad that you brought this point up, because when I started studying nakshatras, I was of the same viewpoints, and there were only very, very few people that I've come across who kind of knew about these things about nakshatras not being associated with any planetary. So one was your book that I came across, and another one was there's a Western astrologer called James Kelleher. So he mentions that also in his book. So these were the only two authors that I've seen. And the other great proponent that I've come across in India who talks about this is a great scholar called Dr. Suresh Chandra Mishra. So he actually says it is, I mean, he goes to the extent to say it is a sin to use planetary rulers to be associated with these nakshatras. Because he says nakshatras are, if you go to the Rig Veda or even the later on Vedas, Atharva Veda. So Rig Veda doesn't mention much about your nakshatras and deities. So whenever you come to the later parts of the Vedas and the Puranas, that is when the descriptions become much more specific. So he mentions, Dr. Sureshchandra Mishra mentions that it is always to do with the natural characteristics of these deities that you have to interpret. And then you link them with myths, and you link them with ancient lores, and then you link them with rituals. Many of us, we do a lot of our customary festivals and rituals, but we never have questioned what is the origin of these rituals. Why are we doing this festival? Nobody has questioned that. And when you go deep to understanding these rituals, festivals, myths, that's when you see a very strong link left by our ancients in a way that they knew that if I had written down something, that wouldn't have been probably passed on, and that might have also been, there might have been a lot of interpolations which might have happened. But this was given to us in terms of rituals, festivals, and myths and symbols. So that is why understanding these symbols, these myths, and these rituals are very, very important, in my opinion. And people, what they've done is they've gone away from understanding these rituals. So I'm very glad that you're bringing these things up, and the concept of going to understand how this interpolations might have happened. So, Vic, what I understand from you is obviously you kind of see that there is no association of the rashis and the nakshatras. Is that the correct way to say it? Because today what happens is people talk about Gandanta. They say, okay, Gandanta is because you have the rashi system and you have the nakshatra system coming to an end. That's why it becomes a Gandanta. Have Gandanta been explained anywhere in our Vedas or in any of the Puranas? But how does this concept of Gandanta then come? Because is this something which is relatively new, or? So I want to know more about Gandantas. What is this Gandanta concept? Has this been referred somewhere, or is this something which is, again, a fiction of our imagination?
Okay. I promise I won't forget this question, but I just want to rewind a little bit. I like, his name was Suresh?
Dr. Sureshchandra Mishra.
I like his idea, like it's a sin. And I was trying to think, why would he say that? But it's because it's actually belittling the nakshatra to say that they're in the rashi. It's belittling. It's aparat, or it's ninda. It's an insult. Because there's bhuva, and then there's swa. And the nakshatras are in the swa. They're swarga. They're not in bhuva. Bhuva is rashi. It's very close to the earth. And the bhu, of course, is the earth itself. That's the houses, the bhavas. From bhu, it becomes bho. With the dhatu becomes bo, and then you add the marker for the thing, and then you get the sandhi, and it becomes bhava. So bhava, we say it's this bhava, this bhava, this bhava. This means a section relative to the earth, relative to bhu. So from bhu, and then there's bhuva, that's the rashi, and then above that is swarga. But nakshatras are in that zone. This is where devatas live, in swarga. So he's right. It is a sin to bring this swarga down to bhuva. It's insulting to the devas, and it's insulting to the nakshatra. I agree. So now onto Gandanta. Yeah, it's a very, very, well, of course, Gandanta, just Anta means end. So I think I can check, but I think Ganda is like this, right?
Yeah, it's a cheek. I think this part of the cheek.
Yeah. So maybe sometimes I think of like your butt, your bottom. You got those two big things that come together. That's like a Gandanta. It's the crack in the butt. So there's a big crack when you get with, if you say, well, Ashwini begins at Aries, 0 degrees, then you'll always find that after 120 degrees, there's also the same click between the nakshatra the rashi, and so, well, because of this click, this is what we're talking about, this cleft, this crack. But actually, I'm not sure where Gandanta comes from. I'm not saying that I know for sure that it doesn't come from any Vedic source, but I also would like to say something about that. But first, I'm not sure where it comes from, but I like the idea. I think the idea is valid anyway, or at least it doesn't seem invalid to me. It's just based on the principle that you have anyway a pattern of fire, earth, air, water. For Rashi, that's their pattern that they follow because of the directions. This can be explained too, but earth is arta, so it's always down, where things are solid and they're steady, they're strong, and they produce. And then, fire, air is kama, so it's west, where the sun sets and things relax. Dharma is east, and it's fire. Dharma is fire. It shows you what's the truth, and it also punishes. And then above is north, that's moksha. That's where you go. If you're going to be a tyagi or a sannyasi, you just go north. And that's where moksha is. That's where the water element is, which is reflective, introspective. So because of these associations with directions, we get a pattern. And then it gets, there's triangles, there's trines, there's ways to show why the rashis have this pattern. But anyway, there's this pattern. And so what the pattern will make is you get earth, you get fire, earth, air, water, and then what comes next, you start the pattern again with fire. So in between fire and water is a Gandanta. It's a very hard border. It's like the border between Tibet and China. It's a dangerous border. So it makes sense to me that there's Gandanta, and I don't see a need for it to be, it's not that it's only because the nakshatras align with that spot. If we say the nakshatras don't align with that spot, that doesn't mean there's no such thing as Gandanta anymore. There's still a very harsh clip between the water of Pisces and then the fire of Aries, or the water of Cancer and the fire of Leo, or Scorpio to Sagittarius.
Right.
The one more thing that I wanted to say, which was interesting in what you brought up, was, is this in the Vedic Shastra? It's dismaying if we come to the idea that there are many things in Indian culture today which aren't Vedic. That comes to a shock to some people who are very conservative and believe that tradition is the most important thing. The Vedas themselves don't say that tradition is the most important thing. The Vedas themselves say Shastra is the most important thing. And it's tradition, tradition is just how Itihasa is Shastra, is tradition. It's how history unfolds. But Shastra is the one that sets the rule. Now, whether or not you follow it depends. And if you think that the tradition is fine, then why does Krishna say, Yada yada hi dharmasya glani? I have to come again and again to fix the mistakes that tradition has caused to the Shastra. So it's just natural that as time progresses, things get introduced that are weird or different. So what's in Indian culture today? It's not that just because it's Indian, it's Vedic. India has a lot of influence from Mughals and British. And then I say we because I identified more like an Indian person. But we have our own problems too. We've messed up our own things. So everybody makes their own mistakes, and then we have mistakes that other people have brought onto us, and they brought plenty, because we got Mughals coming in first, and then we got British people coming, telling us all kinds of things about. And today it hasn't stopped, because you have academic tyranny today. It's still academic oppression on Indians today is really, really a crime also. So there's still like this other cultures telling Indian people what India is. And people may be upset even with me because my face and everything is Italian. So they may say, who is this guy? I would rather see an Indian person telling me these things. I could accept that more easily. I apologize. My next birth. But anyway, you will be dismayed if you think that the Vedic astrology is really Vedic, and then you try to find some information about astrology in the Puranas, even you won't find anything. But it's Vedanga. It's Vedanga. Yeah. So why don't you learn what is Vedanga? Vedanga is how do you calculate the calendar? It's not about how a person is born at this time. And it means that they're going to have 5 daughters. It's not about that at all. That's Jatak. Jatak is referred to in the Puranas. For example, when Parikshit Maharaj was born, then Yudhishthira called Jatakas to come and give him some prediction about what would this child's life be like. So there's concept of Jataka, but we don't hear anything about if they even use planets. Maybe they were using the movement of crows. Maybe they were using. There's so many different nimittis.
Yeah, that's
signs. Right. Jataka doesn't necessarily mean there's Jyotish Jataka. And there's no information, certainly not like this house, that house, that. There's some stuff about zodiac, and there's stuff about nakshatras, defining them, because these are essential for determining the calendar. You have to know months, and you have to know days, and for religious things, you need to know the nakshatras. So this stuff isn't in the Veda. So there again, also, why do you need a guru for this? The Veda is the thing that you need a guru to understand. You don't need a guru to understand how to dig a hole. Or you don't need a guru to understand how to make a car, put a car together. Because it's not a transcendental science, which is from beyond your capacity to comprehend. So actually you're not going to find anything is defined in the Vedas. This is all from the tradition of using this, and it's been borrowed from other cultures. A lot of times Indian people don't like to hear that either, but it's undeniable. There's words like Kendra and Kona, which are not Sanskrit, they're Greek.
Greek, yeah. This is what I want to come at, yeah?
Yeah.
So do you think
it's developing? It's developing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to say that, we did have a lot of influence of the Arabs and the Greeks. And that is where, there was one text which I was referring to. It's called as Yavana Jataka. So that is, Yavanas were mostly the Greeks who brought in these concepts of the houses. That's what, some of the historians and scholars probably say that, Jyotish was never something which came up from India. It was always brought in by these Arabs and these Greeks. But we had our own inherent system. Like what we said, we do not know what the system was. It may not have been based on, planets and understanding that. So even for that matter, people say, Bharat Parashara Hora Shastra. Nobody knows what was actually what Parashara Rishi might have written, because over the ages there might have been a lot of interpolations and additions which might have gone into the system, into that text. We don't know.
This book especially is problematic because it was completely lost for centuries and then reconstructed in the 18th century by a Brahmin, I think South Indian Brahmin, by going around from pundit to pundit and collecting bits of it. Now you and I know how these things are described. Yes, this is the best quality product, and for you it's the lowest price. This is just, so we take liberties with explaining, we exaggerate, it's part of our storytelling. So I don't know, how is he going from place to place and collecting bits of this thing, which was, maybe he did, but maybe he was also, and how could he identify that this is an authentic bit, or this was a bit that was introduced from somebody else? But the proof of the pudding is in how it tastes. If the pudding tastes good, then it's good. And the Vraja Kishor Shastra is an amazing text. So who cares, really? It's an amazing text with incredible math and a whole different approach to astrology than the rest of the world has. Very, very mathematic, systematic, giving you techniques and principles for calculating things, rather than just giving you pictures and information and saying, do your intuition on this. So it's an excellent book, but is it Vedic? Is it really from Parashara? We don't even have this as our tradition. It's actually a tradition that a student will write a book under the name of the teacher and give credit to the teacher. So it's not even evil. It's actually nice. We could say, somebody may have said this is Parashara's book, but it might be because they were inspired by Parashara or they were the student of Parashara.
No, I kind of understand what you're saying. Maybe I have the same thoughts, because what is happening today in the world is people want to associate their work with a rishi so that it becomes holy. And people think, oh, this is what maybe the rishi might have written.
Right.
You have people talking about, Parashar, Jaimini. They say, oh, this is a Jaimini technique, or this is a Brigu technique. Because when you say it's a Brigu technique, then it is.
You can't argue with it.
You can't argue with it, and nobody's going to question you. Who has actually seen? Where is the source? Is there a real source, like a ancient Tamil Nadi script, which tells you that this is what is coming from the lineage of Brigu, something, or from Parashar? That's when you can adopt it. But people want to just market their, that's what I feel, because unless you know the source of that the technique, you cannot get. It's very easy, isn't it? And when you say it is Parashar's work, nobody would even question you. So this is this is very typical in India, because if you ask a guru, do you think this is really Parashar's work? Then he might take offense.
Because his authority is based on it being unquestionably Parashar's work.
Yes.
Everybody is interested in protecting themselves. There's only four motivations for life: to get food, to get rest, to reproduce, and to protect it all.
Right.
Only very rare people have another motivation, which might be to understand reality. Those are called Gyanavam. Oh, what was it said? Samahatma Sudurlabha. It's very, very rare that a person is actually Mahatma and cares about something beyond these four things: protecting themselves and the resources that they have for eating, sleeping, and mating. If you're a Brahmana, so you're a Brahmana, but that's your Varna, that's your Vritti, that's your occupation. So you're not really if you have too much Vritti, Pravritti, if there's too much Vritti for a Brahmana, then their whole thing is spoiled. Because they're just trying to protect what they've gotten from their Vritti, from their occupation. They have a house, they have children, so many things. Fine, but it should be simple. It shouldn't be more than necessary. It should, otherwise you start to bend the truth to be the thing that will keep your shelter and food and place to have babies. So that's no good either.
So Vic, let's go back to Nakshatras. Can you tell us about something about this symbologies in general, because this is where I really believe in, because these texts could be something, there could be interpolation, but myths, rituals, and your symbols are something which has been passed on from generations to generations. So there could be very little interpolations which could happen with symbols. This is my opinion, unless you have another opinion. So tell us, how did this nakshatras, or if you, to your knowledge, how does this nakshatras come being associated with these symbols that you talk about? You say Ashwini nakshatra, the horse's head, right? Or you talk about another nakshatra where you have, another symbology like the Magha nakshatra. They say it's the royal throne room or the royal chamber. So how are these associations, in your opinion, how did they come up with these symbols?
Symbols are wonderful. I love symbols because symbols are how consciousness works. And consciousness is Brahman, and that's the basis of everything. So consciousness works by symbols, and this is how it understands things through symbols, and it communicates through symbols. So the most basic symbols are words. So, and that's what the Shastra is made of. It's made of words. But so symbols are so important. But what a symbol is, it's a way of taking a meaning and putting it into like a capsule, which can then be transported to somebody else. Because we have different Atma. You're from one angle, I'm from another angle. So if I want to get something from within my consciousness to be within your consciousness, or get something from yours into mine, I need to use some kind of a transport vehicle. And that transport vehicle is a symbol It's going to symbolize what I have in my consciousness, that I can send it to you, and you can decode it and get the same vritti, the same samskar into your consciousness. So that's what symbols are. They're a way of encapsulating again, they're a way of encapsulating a truth, reality. That's what a symbol is. That's what a word is. A word is a way of encapsulating. This is one theory, is that a word encapsulates an idea. The linguists have this one theory, and then there's another theory, which is more traditional, that the word is the transmittable form of the reality. So anyway, the symbol is the way that you transmit some real concept. So how do you get symbols for nakshatras? This is another huge mistake that people make. They think that, like, oh, but you look up in the sky and there's the bull. So how can you say that that's not Taurus? I see it right there. That's Taurus. So how can you say Taurus is maybe someplace else? It's shifted a bit. Really, you see a bull? And that's the best one. The bull is the most compelling. It looks the most like the bull. You see a bull, but somebody else sees a square. And actually, they're just dots. There's not a bull up in the sky. There's dots. And as you look at some of the other ones, like Cancer, you see a crab there in Cancer. You can barely see anything. You look at Aries, a ram, it's just a line. There's not even a bright star. There's no bright star by Aries. That's another problem for some other topic. But so the idea is that the mistake is that, look, people looked up in the sky and they saw that there's a bull over there, and so that's why they said this part of the sky has this kind of symbolism, because a bull is like this and this and this. But in fact, that is very unlikely, because you could just as easily look up in the sky over there and see a package of popcorn as you could see a bull, because it's just dots. So it's not actually the way that the zodiac was made, and that's why the zodiac doesn't really have an exact correlation to these dots. The dots are all different sizes, but the zodiacs are all the same size. The rashis are all the same size. And some of them are on top of each other and overlapping each other, but everything's orderly in the zodiac. So it's not that it went from seeing a symbol down to getting meaning. That's not how symbols work. Symbols come from, you have some meaning, and then you communicate it by taking it out as a symbol and giving it to the other person as a symbol. So this is the same thing. It's what the symbol for the Rashi, the symbol for the Nakshatra is the same basic concept. A sage or a person who has understood something about this Nakshatra wants to put it in an easily digestible, compact form, like a sutra. Symbol is like a sutra for an idea. So they'll say, I wonder what would be a good symbol for this. And then they'll think something. And then the one that sticks around for a long time is the one that actually works. The one that really communicates the idea, and the other person gets it, and then the guy or girl who said it thinks, yeah, well, this one worked. I'm going to stick with this symbol. This explained, the person understood what I really wanted when I used this symbol. With the Rashi, it's because you have a combination of a planetary ruler, an element, and a mode that creates a certain kind of a character in a certain area of the sky, and then you can come up with a symbol that summarizes the whole thing. Like a bull summarizes Venus with Earth and fixed. Stira.
Yeah.
It just symbolizes the same thing. And then you see those stars over there in the sky. This is how you can remember it. That thing over there, remember that you connect those dots, it looks like a bull. So with the Rashis, the way that you get meaning into the Rashi, with the Nakshatras, the way that you get meaning is from the Deva. And I believe, though I don't know for sure, but I believe that it's in the Vedanga Jyotish. Because it's also important for doing yajna that the person would do the yajna in the name of the deity who they were born under. So it has to be in the Veda. The Veda can't leave anything out for what's necessary to do the yajna, because that's the whole point of the 4 Vedas, is how to do yajna, set rituals. So if you have to do the yagya in the name of your devata, and it's based on your moon's nakshatra when you were born, then there has to be some correlation. And I think it's in Jyotish Vedanga.
I agree with you. But yeah, I think there is a link with, especially with sacrificial fire that you do in the Vedas and the deities. Also, what is the oblations that you offer? You know, how many rice cakes that you offer. So that is a ritual, and that gives you a lot of meaning about that deity. So this is
right.
Right.
So then they just say, well, why is it even called Ashwini? Okay, well, so the word is another symbol that helps you understand what it is. But in this case, it's really direct. Ashwini, that's the devata. It's the Ashwini. So now if you want to know what is this place like, just like if you want to know what's India like, and if you can't really go there, because you can't go zoom out into space and go there, even if that's where it is physically, I'm not sure, but if you, let's say if you can't go to India, but you really want to know what India is like, well then go to like the local place where Indians hang out in your town and spend some time there. You'll get a feeling for what it's like. So if you want to know what this nakshatra is like, so just understand the personality of the devata who lives there, who dwells there. You want to know what a country is like, find out what the people are like who live there. If you want to know what a nakshatra is like, then what is this deva like? He or she is the lord of this area. So that's the key to understanding the nakshatras, is just to know the devatas. That's why I wrote the book. And people would say, well, this is a lot of, some people generally like the book a lot, but one complaint is there's nothing practical in it. Like, how do I interpret? But I don't feel the necessity for that. Or maybe I have to do that as my next book. But first of all, let's get it straight what these things are before you start using them.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you.
Yeah, education has to be systematic. You'll even find with the angas of the Veda, it doesn't just jump into nyaya or logic. It starts off with shiksha, or how to do phonics, how you should pronounce sounds. It doesn't even go into grammar first. So there has to be step by step. You can't just take a student off the street and just start teaching them about Gajukeshwari yoga. It's meaningless to them if they don't already know what's an angle, what's a trine, what's a sign, what's its relationship to a planet, what's Jupiter, what's the moon. So there has to be some system. So I just felt that first we need to know what are these nakshatras about. And the way of learning what they're about is to learn about the deva, who's there. Then the symbol is a very compact way of communicating the essential part of the essential meaning of the nakshatra. But the problem with the symbol is you need the same reference points that I have, otherwise you'll interpret it differently. Like today, if we say a horse, what will you think about? Fast? It's fast? Because we don't even deal with horses anymore. You have to be Amish and go live in Pennsylvania to see a horse. We don't even touch them anymore. So, but horses, they're very, very healthy. They're very, very beautiful. This is one thing that escapes our understanding these days of how beautiful a horse is. It has hair, beautiful flowing hair. It's very muscular. It's very sleek. So it's very beautiful and it's very healthy. It's all muscle. And they're fast also. And so if you get the full, so you also need to use the symbols that come from a culture, you need to get your background in that culture so that you can interpret the symbol. Your lotus flower, pushya.
Yeah.
What's a lotus flower? I have no idea what's the lotus flower. Most people haven't even seen it. So to get the meaning of it, you have to learn how is this symbol used in this culture. But basically, the symbol is so important because it gives you, in one little picture, the key points of this nakshatra. But if you really want to have education about what the nakshatras are, you shouldn't only, the easiest way to do it, especially since now we're fairly well divorced from Vedic culture. Even most Indians are fairly well divorced from Vedic culture. The best way to get education is not just to go through the symbol. Start with the components what makes a rashi? What do these things symbolize, and how do these come together? What is this deva all about? What kind of things has this deva done? What kind of personality? What are they the deva of? And then the symbol will start to make sense. Like the Ashwinis, they can create health. They're doctors. They can do miraculous things. And then the symbol will make sense. Then you can use the symbol really easily. And the name of the nakshatra is also so important. Bharini tells you so much about the nakshatra, and that's why it's symbolized by a vulva, the place which is giving bhara, which is holding the baby and bringing it forth. Right, so it's a place where things have to be held, a lot of tolerance and patience and effort. So,
no, this is absolutely fascinating that you've been talking about, symbols and also using the actual meaning of the nakshatra. So I think for today's session, Vic, we have talked about some of the misconceptions. We have also talked about, nakshatras and the symbols and how to study them. So I'm very, very happy that you've come today on my channel and we've discussed this so that all the viewers would be able to get a gist of how to study nakshatras. So everybody, first mistake that I've seen most of people who want to study nakshatras do is they want to go into predicting things, but they don't want to understand the foundation, the basis. So first, as you mentioned, you need to understand what the rashi is, what the bhavas is, what is the nakshatra devatas, what is the traits, the characteristics. This is what you need to understand. And then you probably want to go into the symbols and then try to understand what these symbols mean from that cultural perspective. So thank you very, very much, Vic, for coming down onto my channel today and discussing these very intricate secrets. Okay, I would say, or rather, demystifying nakshatras for us. So thank you very much, Vic.
Thank you.
Yeah. So have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.